What's up, guys? This is the Osmo.com Night Shift Podcast. We got a split slate for Wednesday, August 29th, 4-game early, 10-game main slate. Not a ton of pitching options, and definitely not a lot of expensive pitching options at the top. So bats will be at a premium. It'll be easy to fit them in on both slates, it looks like. So I'm going to go through each game quick. We will have the strategy video talking more about both slates with Josh and myself tomorrow morning at about 9 Eastern, a few minutes after usually. So come in and chat and hang out live before lock with Chris and Josh on Wednesdays. And then Osmo will have his lineup card article giving slate-specific advice, sort of his approach to the slate. Hitters, pitchers, stacks, all that stuff, his take on ownership. We will have the ownership projections, of course, and rankings from Osmo himself. So let's do it. We'll start with the early slate. Oakland and Houston. We have Trevor Cahill going up against Dallas Keuchel. Cahill, 8,200. Keuchel is 9K. Not going to be tough to fit in either of these guys. I think Cahill is probably maybe the highest upside option if he could get his stuff together on the road. Like, it's just been, if you look at the game logs, and I know that doesn't say everything, but just look at like DK points. He really struggles on the road, tends to fall apart more often than not, and when he's at home, he's just lights out. So I think he's a fine option in GPPs. I will definitely have some Cahill. He's not going to be my highest exposed pitcher, and I'm not on Keuchel, so he's 9K. I think he's going to be owned because people are going to be looking to spend the salary somewhere, and I'd rather leave some salary on the table, go with some of these other pitchers. I don't think Keuchel is a high upside option himself. And you've got Piscotty and Pinder and Kana, Chapman, Chris Davis, all hitters I really respect against lefties. So I haven't been targeting against Oakland lately, and I'm not going to do it here, especially when I'm expecting decent ownership on Keuchel. Houston bats, I'm looking to either full stack or not play at all, lineup to lineup, just because when Cahill's on, he's really tough to hit. When he's not, he tends to blow up, like I talked about a little bit earlier. Detroit and Kansas City, Michael Fulmer going up against Danny Duffy. Both of these guys should have some ownership. Like, neither of these guys will be like 5% owned. I would think that Duffy's going to be pretty popular here. He looked better in his last start coming off the DL. I think he had like a 12-day layoff. Velocity was back up a little bit, not to where it was before, but good to see his velocity get back up there, rack up some strikeouts, and just have a decent overall start. He racked up 15 DK points, got up to 96 pitches, so nothing's holding me back from using Duffy here besides outlandish ownership, which I don't know is going to be the case, but if it is, Nick Castellanos is a really fun leverage play, a 195 WRC plus for Castellanos. Under 20% K rate against lefties this year, 50% hard hit rate. Like, the guy just crushes lefties. So there's your leverage play if Duffy is the chalky option. Fulmer, he threw 77 pitches in his last start, so we were kind of off of him because we figured that 75, 80 was going to be his limit, and now I would guess his limit's probably 90, maybe a few more pitches than 90 if things are going really well. It's Kansas City. They just don't have much in the way of power or just good hitters. They've got Merrifield, and Gordon's been better lately. Duda's fine against righties, as is Salvador Perez, but you go down this lineup and it gets really thin really fast. So I have no problem using Fulmer. I'm probably not going to be on the Royal stack. Let's go to the next game. Mets and Cubs. We have Jason Vargas going up against Alec Mills. Vargas, 6,100. Mills, 5,800. So Vargas is not someone that I really respect. I know he can have good starts every now and then. When he's on, he can miss bats and such. And he's frustrating sometimes, both playing him and rostering hitters against him. But I'm all over these Cubs bats. I love Wilson Contreras, David Bodie, Javi Baez is 5,600, but that's fine. You're going to be able to afford him. And then Vargas is really bad against lefties. Talked about it on the last night shift when he was pitching. So I really, really love Rizzo and Daniel Murphy as well. And people may see some of these lefties, this balanced Cubs lineup, and kind of be soured on the Cubs. And they'll see the wind blowing in, but I love the Cubs. I think they are my favorite stack on this early slate. Alec Mills, 5,800. I'll have a lot of shares of him. He will likely be my highest exposed pitcher. I think he's going to have run support, as I just mentioned. I love the Cubs stack. But outside of that, pretty impressive start for Alec Mills against Cincinnati. That's who it was. And so pulling it up right now, 14.3% swinging strike rate, got ahead of hitters, got chases, did everything that you could ask. And then on top of that, he threw I don't have it in front of me. But Alec Mills, let's see. We can do a quick search. We can go on Baseball Reference. So I always like to look up how many pitches these guys throw in their debuts, just to see what kind of leash they have. They're coming up from AAA. And so looking at Mills' start, he threw 84 pitches, yeah. So I knew it was a decent amount. Like, they didn't pull him after 5 innings just because he had 70 pitches or anything like that. So I have no issue using Mills here. Like I said, the wind's blowing in. Not a lot of scary bats on the Mets side, even if Conforto and Bruce are in there. I mean, those are guys that will still strike out at the very least. So bunch of strikeout upside for Mills, and he's 5,800. So pretty easy play to get to for me there. Mariners and Padres, we have Erasmo Ramirez against Joey Lucchesi. Erasmo is 6,300 going into Petco. Interested to see if people will be on him. Like all these guys are punt priced, and I can kind of make a case for any of them. I mean, Erasmo is probably my least favorite on this slate, as is Jason Vargas. Those guys would be tied for last. And I probably won't have any exposure to either one. But 6,300, you're pitching in San Diego. He's coming off a nice start. I don't think anything has really changed for Erasmo. He's getting blasted by righties, 55% hard contact. Just a lot of solid contact he's giving up. And, I mean, his luck could certainly run out here. So I know guys like Renfroe and Hedges and Will Myers all strike out a bunch against righties, but when they make contact, they hit the ball really hard. So I like San Diego as kind of a contrarian stack on a 4-game slate, as contrarian as you can really be on a 4-game slate. I mean, all these stacks are going to have some ownership. No one's going to go completely overlooked, but San Diego should be in the bottom half of ownership, I would say, on this slate. Lucchesi, 7,500. I'm on him here. So looking at his changeup, he's getting 40% whiffs per swing rate on his changeup this month. And I know that's a small sample, but it's around guys like Freeland, Tyler Anderson, Kyle Gibson, Wade Miley, Cole Hamels. Well, no one's really close to Cole Hamels. He's kind of winning that by a landslide as far as changeups in August. But pretty encouraging for Joey Lucchesi. I mean, I'm worried about Nelson Cruz and Mitch Haniger. I mean, who wouldn't be? But for 7,500, I don't think he's going to have a ton of ownership. I think people will go to Boyd, and they'll go to, or not Boyd, they'll go to Duffy and Fulmer. And I actually like Lucchesi in tournaments. All right. Nationals and Phillies. This is the first game of the main slate. We've got Gio Gonzalez going up against Jake Arrieta. Gonzalez is 6,700. Arrieta is 8K. So not on either of these pitchers. We've got great hitting weather, and two guys that have really had trouble missing bats. I know he's seen some okay results from Arrieta as of late, but I love Bryce Harper and Juan Soto, Anthony Rendon, righty. He's just too cheap for 4,200. And then Trey Turner for 4,700 as well. I haven't looked to see how Arrieta has been at holding runners this year, but I know that's been a real concern of his in the past, just allowing steals all over the place. So it could be possibly an extra boost for a guy like Trey Turner and even Adam Eaton to some extent. So, yeah, I actually have Arrieta as one of the worst at holding runners, just looking that up quick right now. One of the worst over the last few years. I don't know specifically this year, but definitely has not made huge changes. So the Nats are actually one of my favorite stacks that like that they only have a 4.4 run total. Again, wind blowing out and 90-plus degrees, just super favorable for some good hitters on the Nationals side. And then Gonzalez, can't go to him. Wilson Ramos jumps off the page if he's in the lineup for 4,900. But guys like Rhys Hoskins, under 5K, Carlos Santana, only 4,200. Asdrubal Cabrera is only 4,100, so the Phillies should be a pretty popular option. Toronto and Baltimore, we've got Ryan Borucki going up against Alex Cobb. Borucki, 6,200, Cobb, 6,400. Mild interest in both of these guys for me. I don't think any of them are spectacular, although we've seen improvements from Alex Cobb. He's missing a lot more bats. He's getting ahead, and then he's just being allowed to go deep. He seems to have gained the trust of Baltimore's organization, and even in starts where he hasn't been spectacular, he's been going over 100 pitches. And there's something to be said for that, for 6,400 on a slate where you're just looking for pitchers not to kill you, because there's no bona fide aces on this slate, not even one that's really close, honestly. So there's a bunch of guys, a bunch of punts that I'm interested in using. Even if you're going up to a guy like Sabathia or Godley, that's still going to leave you a ton of salary on the table. And Borucki and Cobb, I think, can both be okay. I prefer Cobb. He's at home. Like I said, he looks like he's made some improvements, missing a few more bats, getting more chases than earlier in the year, and not allowing as quality contact as he was earlier in the year. All right. So, bats in that game, not really interested on either side. I mean, I like VR against Borucki, but after that, it really drops off for me. And then against Cobb, I don't really want to target a ton of bats. I like what I'm seeing from him, but Billy McKinney is 3,800 and leading off. It's hard not to at least consider him there. White Sox and Yankees, we have Reynaldo Lopez going into Yankee Stadium to face CC Sabathia. Reynaldo is 5,200 on this slate, and honestly, not cheap enough for me to play him here in Yankee Stadium. He had a couple decent starts as of late, but those were against Kansas City and Detroit, so a little bit different caliber of a team he's going to face here in one of the toughest places to pitch in. Still walking a lot of guys, and I mean, I'm all over the Yankees. I think they're going to be really popular. I mean, I don't think people will be on Reynaldo, and they shouldn't, honestly. Yankees should be super chalky, and for good reason. Sabathia, I think, is really interesting for 8,900. And I wish he wasn't this big of a favorite, because I'm expecting him to be popular because of that Vegas line. He's almost a minus 250 favorite right now. And maybe I'll be wrong in the morning and he'll come in at 15%. If that's the case, I have a ton of interest in him. So over his last 3 starts, a 21.4% swinging strike rate with 12 strikeouts against the same White Sox team in Chicago. So you can say that's an outlier, whatever. Pitched fine against Texas. 7 strikeouts in that game, I believe. Swinging strike wasn't super high or anything. It was just below 10. Last start against Baltimore, 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, allowed a couple earned runs, but 15% swinging strike rate. So against bad teams, CC can still miss bats. And I don't think he's going to have too much trouble doing that here against guys like Palka and Avisel Garcia and Moncada and Yolmer Sanchez if he's in the lineup as well. You guys know how I feel about Adam Engel, and Matt Davidson strikes out a bunch. So 8,900 for CC seems like a lot for sure. But man, I could just see him getting close to double-digit strikeouts here, which is insane. I wouldn't even have thought that maybe even a month ago, but it seems like another spot where he could just mow down a bad team, and he's been doing that recently. So, yeah, I like CC here. There's maybe only going to be one guy that could get me off of him. Brewers and Reds, we've got Freddie Peralta going up against Matt Harvey. Weather concerns in this one, but if it plays 80 degrees and super humid, 85% humidity, against Peralta, I actually like this red stack once again. His fastball has dropped another tick, and pretty much all of his pitches have dropped a little bit in velocity his last start. Not a huge concern, just about a mile per hour on each. But for a guy that can't really afford to lose much velocity on his fastball, it's down under 90. This is a pretty rough spot to pitch in. You've got good hitters like Votto and Scooter Gennett and Suarez, who I always love, of course. But I really, really like this Reds stack, especially those 3 bats I mentioned. Here we go. Against Harvey, he's going to struggle with lefty power. Man. All right. There we go. Man, I get distracted sometimes doing this. All right. Harvey, 6,900. He's going to struggle with lefty power still, despite being better with the Reds since getting traded earlier in the season. So Travis Shaw, Christian Yelich, I think are really awesome plays, as is Mike Moustakas for only 4,400. The Brewers stack as a whole isn't going to be too tough to fit in because there's no studs once again. So I like the Brewers full stack against Harvey. If it's not going to be like the chalkiest stack, and I doubt it will be because it's a 5-run total. We've got Cleveland at 5.5. We've got a huge total for the Dodgers in the Texas game and the Yankees, of course. So I like the Brewers. I'm on them once again. Twins and Indians, we have Cole Stewart going up against Adam Plutko. Stewart is 4,400, Plutko 5K. I'm not on Stewart not going into Cleveland here. He's going to struggle with lefties. He's already struggling to strike them out. I mean, he's giving up a ton of hard contact to them. And you start out with Lindor, Brantley, Ramirez, and that's a recipe for disaster for a young pitcher. So I'm not on Stewart. I am on those 3 Indians bats especially. And then Plutko, 5K. I mean, he's another one. I think he's going to struggle with lefties. And he has so far, giving up a bunch of hard contact. He's walking guys. But even though he had 5 earned runs in his last start, he was able to go 105 pitches. And as we get into September, just being able to go over 100 pitches for some of these guys at a decent price tag is going to be valuable, at least in my eyes. So I think Plutko is going to be in my player pool. I can honestly see scenarios where I go with like Plutko and Alex Cobb, or like Plutko and Borucki, or any of these guys down here, just because I'm prioritizing bats in all my lineups, and then just fitting in whichever pitchers I can, including some of these, prioritizing hitters and fitting in whichever pitchers. So I'll get expensive hitters like Lindor and Brantley and Ramirez. There just seems like really, really good spots for hitters and not much to pay up for pitching. Tampa Bay and Atlanta, we got Diego Castillo going up against Sean Newcomb. Castillo not going to go very deep. I don't know who's expected to open or who's expected to get the bulk of the innings after Castillo opens. So we'll talk about Braves bats tomorrow once we have a better idea of who's coming in. But Newcomb is 9,200. I think he's pretty safe here against Tampa Bay, under 4 total for them. A few lefties in here, and I just think Newcomb is a pretty solid pitcher. You've got some strikeouts with guys like Carlos Gomez and Kiermaier if he's in there, and Willie Adames as well. So I don't think Newcomb really lacks upside. I can see him getting to 25, maybe a little bit more than that. So he's definitely on my radar. The problem is I like CC and I like Godley, and those guys are both cheaper. So it's going to be tough for me to get to Newcomb unless he comes in at something like 7 or 8% ownership. All right. Dodgers and Rangers, we have Alex Wood going up against Mike Minor. Wood is 8,400. Minor, 7,500. So no pitchers in this game. Just get that out of the way. I mean, I think some people will use Alex Wood to try to get cute, but even though these Rangers strike out a ton, Wood isn't the biggest strikeout pitcher. And then you've got even the lefties that hit the ball hard, at the very least, against left-handed pitching, like Gallo, Odor, Shin-Soo Choo as well. Like, these are all respectable hitters, even though it's going to be lefty-lefty. So 4.7 run total for Texas. Super hot here, 90 degrees. Once again, I'm on kind of this Rangers contrarian stack. Everyone's going to look at the Dodgers in this game, myself included, but I think people will just kind of overlook this Texas team, and I think that's a mistake on this slate. Minor, cannot play him either, of course. I mean, I love all the Dodgers. There's not much to say. Like, you can play 1 through 9. I literally think that all these guys are top 4 or 5 players at their position. So Dodgers should be mega chalk, especially because there's no top pitchers. So you're going to be able to fit in all the Dodgers you want. It's just going to be a matter of do you go there? Do you go to the Yankees? Do you go to Cleveland bats? I mean, there's just a bunch of top options at really expensive price tags. Pittsburgh and St. Louis, we have Trevor Williams going up against Miles Michaelis. Williams has given up 1 or 0 earned runs in in 6 out of his last 7 starts. And in that one where he gave up more than 1 earned run, he gave up just 2. So kind of a sick run for Trevor Williams. Not a great DFS pitcher, and I don't think I'm going to be playing him here. Just because he's 7,300, I think there are some better options. But I'm not targeting Cardinals bats. A lot of righties here. And Williams is probably due for some regression against lefties, but against righties, he's just been really solid all year. So not on Williams, but also not on the Cardinals bats. Michaelis, 7,800. Another guy that I don't have an issue with, kind of like Newcomb, but there's guys around him that I think have a ton more upside. So it's going to be tough for me to get to Michaelis. I don't love any Pirates bats or anything, but Dickerson is 3,700 and hits lefties really well, 37% hard contact, under 13% K rate, 195 ISO, and 118 WRC+. So I just wanted to note that I like him as a value if you're even going to need any value at hitting tonight. Arizona and San Francisco, last game of the night. We've got Zach Godley going up against Derek Rodriguez. Godley, even when he's giving up earned runs, he's still racking up the strikeouts. So he can be really frustrating to play. I don't want to target San Francisco bats against him. I really like Godley as a pitcher. Just if you look at him, you kind of look at his game logs, you're going to see why he misses a ton of bats when he's right. I don't know if he was right earlier in the season, but he looks fine right now. I mean, he's going to have games where he gives up a dong or two, and he's giving up 4 or 5 earned runs. But I'll take the good with the bad. And in this park, it's going to be really tough to hit home runs even off Godley, a guy who gives up a lot of hard contact. But I'm super interested in Godley, so I just worry he's going to be mega chalk, and that's a little bit concerning. And then Derek Rodriguez, 9,500. I think this guy is pretty fraudulent. Don't think he has much upside for 9,500. Gives up a ton of hard hits, and so if I'm on anything outside of Godley in this game, it's Arizona bats. It's Pollock, it's Goldschmidt. Eduardo Escobar, I think, is a really fun GPP play, and I think Arizona is a fun GPP stack. It's a bad park. It's a low total. Very few people will be on them, but I'm just going against a pitcher that I think has quite a bit of regression coming. All right, that's going to do it for the night shift. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Check out Spotlight Hitters, Pitchers, Stacks. We will have the strategy video, so come join Josh and myself. And we will talk to you in the morning. Good luck researching this slate, guys.